generally. And that's sort of a what's this space almost in terms of that space. But one of the things that's relevant for this heritage discussion that I'll talk about now is we're also, in addition to operational efficiency, how much does this building use to power itself and air condition in a given day? What are the life cycle, or sometimes referred to as embodied energy implications for this building if you had to rip it down and replace it again? There's an awful lot of concrete in this building, and if you were to start it again, there's an awful lot of carbon that we're reduced in reproducing it. So that's one of the challenges we've got that's particular to the heritage issues about that Dave was talking about, active reuse of buildings. Okay. So what does this all then mean for heritage buildings? And I suppose it's one of those issues. It's going to mean a lot of challenges because, as Dave had said, there's two key challenges to heritage buildings, any renovations. One, there's not much you can do with the fabric. You're required to have a building of a certain type. It's got elements that are contributing to the heritage of the building, and as a result, you can't do much with that. And the other thing that goes along with heritage buildings that I'm aware of is cost, because having renovated my own house, I'm well aware as soon as you start renovating something, it usually costs about twice what it takes to build it from scratch. And those are the realities that anyone who's involved in this space knows about. So in that context, it's clear that in terms of heritage type of buildings, there is significant challenges in both, what you can do in the fabric in terms of cost, what you can do in terms of moving forward. So rather than leave you on a very depressing note about making things, it's all very hard, I thought I would just quickly touch on 3 exemplary buildings, if you like, that we're aware of that have done really good work in this space of converting an existing heritage building to a more energy efficient outcome. The 3 pictures there, the first one, thanks for that, Shane, I've got a few ticks there, I didn't realise that. The first one is 39 Hunter Street in Sydney, and this was the first building, as I understand it, to get a 5-star rating from the Green Building Council of Australia. I understand that there's someone else going to talk about this later on, so I'm not going to talk about it today, so I'll just move on to the next one. The next building is the Good Shed North number 2 at Melbourne Docklands. Now, this one as a public servant is particularly interesting to me, because apparently what the Victorian Government has done is refurbished it and then put in Vic Urban into the building, which is not that dissimilar to what I'm doing, and I'd just love it if somebody was to refit a building and fit me in there and give me a nice view of the river again. I've lost my view of the river recently. So, I mean, what I'm trying to say there is that this building here was one that was a wood shed, a good shed for the rail. They've come in, they've done a lot of work in terms of cogeneration with a gas-fired plant there. They've done the underwater heating, using chill beams for the air conditioning. So a lot of innovative technology, no doubt costly, but a lot of really innovative ways to address the whole environmental issues in a building. And again, the last one, just very quickly, this is the Perth GPO. Heritage listed, had a complete refurb, and has also achieved the 4.5-star rating. And again, it's done so by the use of very innovative sort of technology to get to that space. I suppose the lessons for these buildings, if you want to just draw across them, is that there are opportunities that can be done for existing heritage buildings, and predominantly in 3 areas, the first one being HVAC. Particularly in Queensland, if we can get more efficient air conditioning in place, then that's something you can do, and it doesn't really have that much input on the fabric of the building if it's got existing air conditioning in the space. Take your point, David, that a lot of these buildings, the older ones, are designed not to have air conditioning, and that's something that we're very keen to promote in Queensland as well, about getting those design features right, so if we can do without air conditioning, that's good. But for those buildings that already have air conditioning there, going to a more efficient air conditioning may be a good solution. The next one is on-site generation capacity, and that generally ties into the HVAC thing, because if you're having to produce electricity, you're also going to have a byproduct of heat, and once you've got heat, you can then produce heat and cooling from that for your building. The Prince Charles Hospital, I don't know if you guys are aware of that one, has recently put in place a cogeneration plant which provides enough electricity so if the power goes down, they can run the entire building on that. And as a result of that, they're also getting heating and steam for all of their purposes there, and they're also putting a chiller stack onto that as well, which allows them to get cooling for that as well. So there are, there's innovative solutions in that HVAC, particularly when talking about cogeneration and trigeneration. And finally, and one of the points that Natalie made was lighting efficiency. Everyone knows that incandescent bulbs are terrible, and so in Queensland, in a residential capacity, we have said, when you build a new house, 80% of your building's lighting must come from energy efficiency globes. You know, moving from the compact fluorescents now to the LCD type of lighting, or LED rather lightings, there's even more significant gains that are going to be in the space. So if we can retrofit, you know, existing heritage light fittings to take those LEDs, which, you know, are not that dissimilar and, you know, particularly different to the, I mean, the compact fluoros look terrible in a heritage sort of setting, but I think there's probably a little bit of potential in the LED space to move into some gains there. So look, that's kind of what I wanted to say, and I promised Jim that I would be very quick and I wouldn't go on to the next time. I've done all right, Jim?
Pretty well.
All right. And I think there's questions later as well, isn't there? So I'll finish with that. I hope there was some information for people when we got some questions later. Thank you very much.